What happens when an entire district learns to live without depending on the road? Deep inside the Himalaya, there is a place where a journey can begin long before a vehicle ever arrives. A place where the Karnali River cuts through some of the deepest valleys in the Himalaya, where villages cling to mountainsides high above the river, and where reaching entire communities can still take days on foot. In the north, prayer flags flutter above centuries-old monasteries. In the south, temple bells echo through villages shaped by a different tradition. Different cultures, different landscapes. But the same reality. The mountains decide how people travel, what they grow, and how they survive. Between these two worlds are villages that have learned to adapt to altitude, distance, and seasons that can change the course of everyday life. Yet isolation is only the beginning of Humla's story. What keeps people here? How do they endure unforgiving winters, grow food on steep mountain slopes, raise families in a landscape where every resource must be carefully managed, and preserve traditions that have survived for centuries? And as roads slowly push deeper into these mountains, can Humla remain the place it has always been? Today, we're exploring Humla, not as one of Nepal's most isolated districts, but as the home of nearly 60,000 people whose lives continue to be shaped by these mountains. From above, Humla appears less like a single district and more like a collection of mountain worlds separated by cliffs, rivers, and high passes. Between these valleys, distance is not measured in kilometers. It is measured by the hours people spend walking, the passes they must cross, and the supplies they must carry home. It looks like a maze of mountains, deep river gorges, wind-swept ridges, and scattered valleys where every settlement seems hidden from the next. Across more than 5,600 square kilometers, fewer than 60,000 people are spread across one of Nepal's most rugged landscapes. Instead of one continuous valley, Humla is a collection of mountain worlds, each separated by steep cliffs, high passes, and fast-flowing rivers. Running through them all is the Karnali River. Rising in the highlands of Humla, it slices through the mountains, creating the narrow pockets of land where villages have survived for centuries. Around the Karnali, every piece of flat ground has been claimed for farming. Villages were built on sunny slopes above the river to avoid floods, while making the most of the limited, cultivable land. Over generations, families carved terraces into the mountainsides, turning steep hills into fields capable of producing food. The landscape never stays the same for long. In the south, forests of pine, oak, and rhododendron cover the hillsides. Climb higher, and they gradually give way to alpine meadows, barren slopes, and the cold, wind-swept terrain of the Tibetan Plateau. Within a single district, the climate, vegetation, and even the way people live can change from one valley to the next. That is what makes Humla so extraordinary. It isn't one landscape. It's many landscapes, woven together by the Karnali River and the people who have learned to call each of them home. At first glance, Humla appears to be one mountain region. But follow the trails deeper into its valleys, and another story begins to emerge. North of Simikot, villages such as Halji, Til, and Jang feel closely connected to the Tibetan Plateau. Prayer flags flutter above rooftops. Buddhist monasteries stand at the center of village life, and Tibetan is still spoken in everyday conversation. Travel south instead, and you'll find Hindu temples, Nepali-speaking communities, and traditions more closely linked to Nepal's middle hills. Within a single district, altitude and history have created two different ways of understanding the mountains. So how did one district develop two very different identities? The answer is written into the old mountain routes that crossed these valleys. For centuries, Humla stood between Nepal and Tibet. The mountain trails that crossed these valleys carried more than people moving between kingdoms. They also carried languages, beliefs, architecture, and traditions. While those ancient roots have changed over time, the cultures they shaped remain part of everyday life. That influence can still be seen throughout Limi Valley. Stone houses with flat roofs, long mani walls carved with Buddhist prayers, white chortens, and colorful prayer flags are all part of the landscape around Halji, Til, and Jang. But these are not only symbols of the past. They are part of daily life, woven into the routines of families who still depend on these valleys. Together with the centuries-old Rinchen Monastery, they represent a living tradition that continues through prayers, festivals, and everyday village life. That is why Humla isn't just a place of difficult four landscapes. It is also a place where two Himalayan worlds continue to meet. And nowhere is that more visible than in the daily lives of the people who call these mountains home. Roads are slowly reaching parts of Humla, but for many communities, the mountain trail remains the real connection to the outside world. Beyond Simikot, walking remains the only reliable way to reach many villages. These trails are not simply routes between villages, they are the paths that bring food, medicine, supplies, and people together. The trails follow the Karnali River, climb steep ridges, cross narrow suspension bridges, and disappear into valleys where movement has always depended on human effort and animals rather than machines. For many families, carrying food, building materials, or even a sack of grain on their backs is simply another part of the journey home. A journey that may appear difficult to an outsider is simply part of the yearly rhythm of life in Humla. That reality shapes the way people live. Only a small fraction of Humla's land can be farmed, which is why every terrace represents generations of work carved into the mountainside. In the lower valleys, farmers grow rice where conditions allow, while higher settlements depend mainly on barley, buckwheat, potatoes, beans, and millet, crops that can survive the district's short growing season and cold climate. The goal is rarely abundance. It is survival through the months when the mountains give very little back. Agriculture alone, however, cannot support most households. Many families also keep yaks, sheep, goats, cattle, and hardy mountain horses. For generations, this seasonal movement between villages and high pastures has connected families to the same landscapes their ancestors depended on. As temperatures rise, livestock are moved to high alpine pastures, where they remain through the summer before returning to the villages ahead of the first heavy snowfall. This seasonal movement has been part of life in Humla for generations and continues to shape the yearly rhythm of work. Because every village sits in a different valley and at a different elevation, no two communities live in exactly the same way. Yet across Humla, one thing remains constant. Daily life is planned around the landscape. From choosing what to grow to deciding when to travel, the mountains continue to shape almost every decision. Despite the distances separating its villages, life in Humla has always depended on people staying connected. Across the district, homes are built from locally quarried stone and timber, standing close together to conserve warmth during the long winter months. In these villages, houses are not built only as shelters. They are places where families store food for winter, gather around shared fires, and pass knowledge from one generation to the next. Narrow lanes lead to shared courtyards, watermills, monasteries, temples, and terraced fields that generations of families have worked together. One of the best examples is Limi Valley, one of the highest inhabited valleys in Nepal. Home to the villages of Halji, Til, and Jang, it has preserved a way of life shaped by the Tibetan plateau for centuries. Here, survival has always depended on understanding the rhythm of the mountains, the short farming season, the movement of animals, and the arrival of winter. The valley's isolation has helped protect not only its language and traditions, but also some of the oldest religious monuments in the Himalaya. At the center of Halji stands Rinchen Monastery, believed to have been founded in the 11th century. It remains one of Nepal's oldest Buddhist monasteries and continues to serve as the spiritual and cultural heart of the valley. Throughout the year, local festivals, prayers, and community gatherings still take place within its ancient walls. Humla is also home to important Hindu temples, particularly in its southern valleys, where faith continues to shape village life in different ways. Although traditions vary across the district, one value remains remarkably consistent: community. From repairing irrigation canals and maintaining mountain trails to harvesting crops before winter arrives, many tasks are still carried out collectively. In a landscape where nature often determines the rules, cooperation has remained one of Humla's most important forms of survival. For much of the year, life in Humla follows a familiar rhythm. Then, winter arrives. As temperatures fall and snow begins to cover the higher passes, the paths that connect villages slowly disappear beneath ice and snow. Trails that carried farmers, traders, and schoolchildren only weeks earlier can disappear beneath snow and ice. A journey that was ordinary in summer can become a serious challenge in winter. In the northern valleys, heavy snowfall may isolate communities for days or even weeks, depending on the weather. During this time, families must rely on what they have stored, what they have prepared, and the support of those living nearby. That is why preparation begins long before winter. Throughout autumn, families harvest potatoes, barley, buckwheat, and beans before storing enough food to last through the coldest months. Firewood is collected and stacked outside homes. Livestock are brought down from the alpine pastures, and every journey is carefully planned because reaching them again may not be possible for weeks. Winter also changes daily life. Schools may see fewer students during periods of heavy snow, health services become harder to reach, and even routine travel depends entirely on the condition of the mountain trails. For children growing up here, winter is not only a season of cold, it is a season that teaches patience, responsibility, and adaptation from an early age. For many families, patience becomes as important as preparation. Yet life does not stop. Morning prayers continue inside monasteries, smoke still rises from kitchen stoves, and villages adapt to a slower pace until the first signs of spring return to the mountains. In Humla, winter is not an interruption to life. It is a season people have learned to prepare for, live with, and endure year after year. In Humla, distance is measured differently. It isn't counted in kilometers. It is counted in hours of climbing, river crossings, unpredictable weather, and the weight carried on your back. For generations, mountain trails have connected villages that remain invisible from one another. These paths carry not only supplies, but the everyday necessities that allow communities to continue living in these mountains. In many parts of the district, mules and horses are still the most dependable way to transport supplies, while porters continue to carry loads across trails that no vehicle can reach. But the greatest adaptation is not the ability to carry heavy loads, it is the ability to plan ahead. That dependence on footpaths has shaped a different way of thinking. Families rarely make unnecessary journeys. Before setting out, they plan carefully, carrying everything they might need, because returning the next day may not be possible. A forgotten item, a delayed journey, or a sudden change in weather can affect an entire day's plan. Villages have also learned to rely on local resources wherever they can, building homes from stone and timber, storing food before winter, grinding grain in traditional watermills, and making the most of every short, growing season. Life in Humla has never depended on convenience. It has depended on preparation. And perhaps that is the district's greatest lesson. In a place where the landscape cannot be changed easily, generations of people have chosen instead to adapt themselves to the mountains. In Humla, life is measured differently. Here, the rhythm of life is measured by seasons, journeys, and the ability to prepare for what the mountains will bring. A journey isn't judged by how long it takes to drive, but by whether the weather will allow you to cross the next pass. A successful harvest isn't simply another season's work. It is the food that will sustain a family through the winter. Even the smallest tasks, collecting firewood, repairing terraces, or carrying supplies home, are part of a routine that has been shaped by these mountains for generations. That is why Humla cannot be understood by looking only at its remoteness. Its greatest story is the relationship between the people and the mountains they call home.
Without trying to reshape the landscape, they have learned to live within its limits. Every terrace, every trail, and every village carries evidence of that adaptation. They have built villages where land could be farmed, continued traditions that guide community life, and passed down knowledge that remains valuable across generations. The mountains still set the conditions, but it is the people of Humla who have shown that resilience is not about conquering a place, it is about learning how to belong to it.